Hey Facebook, State Representative Paul Curtman here. Real quick, I just want to update you on the Real ID Act situation in Jefferson City, in our state capital. As many of you know, the Real ID Act of 2005 requires the states to implement certain standards for national identification. So in other words, there is in fact a national ID card that the states are going to be required to administer and produce. The problems that I have with this: first of all, I think it's a violation of the 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment, the First Amendment. I think it's a violation of Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution, as well as Article 1, Section 8, 9, and 10. And I think that since we're being robbed of these particular constitutional protections without due process, then that makes it immediately a violation of the 6th Amendment. So in addition to the constitutional issues that I have an issue with the fact that we're giving a bureaucracy a lot of power to determine what personal information citizens have to hand over to the government to store in databases in order to get one of these cards. I also have a problem with the fact that a single bureaucracy gets to decide what information goes on these cards. Furthermore, I think my main concern, the really big danger that I see here, is the fact that this bureaucracy gets to determine what an American citizen has to have this card in order to do or not do. For example, in 2018, you have to have this card in order to fly. And if you don't have this card, you're also probably not going to be allowed into most federal buildings. So if you decide to opt out of this card, you're not going to be able to fly to Washington, D.C., or anywhere else for that matter, and visit your congressman in his office to complain about a national law. So I think that this entirely undermines the whole purpose of American government, which is not to keep us safe. A lot of people say the purpose of government is to keep us safe. Ronald Reagan even said that the primary function of government is to keep us safe. There's a lot of people who think that, but that's not true. The primary purpose of government is to keep us free. That's it. It's right out of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. All these principles are in there that government should be designed to help keep people free. Benjamin Franklin, famous quote from Benjamin Franklin, warned us that if we trade our liberty for security, we will lose both. So I say let Donald Trump build the wall. I say let us implement this extreme vetting he talks about to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and being safe from terrorist threat, right? But there's other things that we can do before casting a wide net over all the American population for the purpose of safety, if at the same time we have to surrender our liberty. That's a lot of power to give one bureaucracy for them to determine what we can and can't do based on whether or not we have this card. We know that bureaucracies abuse this type of power. Department of Education, most recently, they sent a memo out across America telling public schools that they had to implement a gender-neutral bathroom and locker room policy, otherwise their funding might be at stake. Got an issue with that. I don't think bureaucracy should have that type of power. That's what we have Congress and the U.S. Senate for, is to make laws and rules that are a direct representation of the American people. Before that, the IRS targeted conservative groups in order to prevent them from organizing politically. Very dangerous to give these types of bureaucracies this much power. In spite of how well-intended they are, this type of power should not go unchecked. And I know this is a real issue for people in Missouri, because right now they're not allowed on military bases. We have airports that certainly want people to be able to fly, but the solution isn't just blind compliance. The solution is not just throwing out our Constitution. In times where we need to be safe, those are probably the times where it's more important than ever that we cling to our Constitution and the God-given rights that it protects. So my position is the state needs to exercise some of our federalism and actually be a check on the federal government and ask the federal government to rein in some of the authority that Department of Homeland Security has. Whenever they want to promulgate a new rule saying what American citizens can and can't do with this card, that rule needs to be approved by Congress. In other words, by the representation of the people. So that is my position. Somebody is going to wildly abuse this power. It's going to happen. It's happened in other bureaucracies going back decades and decades and decades. The same thing will happen here. I'm just warning everybody right now, it's going to happen. So we certainly should not give this much unchecked power to unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats.